This week's episode of Trek Geeks is brought to you by Fansets, the place for amazing pin collectibles. They have nearly 200 officially licensed Star Trek pins to choose from, with new pins coming out every month. See all the pins and collectibles they have to offer at fansets.com, and stay tuned for this week's special Trek Geeks discount code. Fansets. We are Star Trek.
We are the Borg, and you are listening to the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks podcast with Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. You will listen. Resistance is futile. You must comply.
From a Boston holodeck in the Podfleet Command headquarters here on good old Terra Prime, it's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, the flagship of the Trek Geeks podcast network. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Trek Geeks. I am excited to be here today. It's been a few weeks, so thanks for hanging in there with us. We are back with episode number 169, and today we're going to talk about something that, a seed that was planted in our ears several months ago. And of course, I did use a plural there, our ears. When I say our, I do mean my co-host and I. You know, if the Hirogen ever took over our ship, this is probably the last person they would ever hunt after, because honestly, who wants him? He would probably just be, you know, the last kid picked in any Hirogen hunt. He's the largely forgettable and really uninspiring Dan Davidson. Dan, welcome aboard, buddy, and welcome back. It's good to have you back in that chair.
Hi. Thanks. Good to be here. That was really mean.
Glad to see you're approaching the podcast with as much zeal and excitement as you do every other time.
No, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, Bill. It's been a while. Before we get started, I just have to say thank you. And thank you to all of the people that have reached out to my wife and I for condolences on the passing of my father-in-law. Very much appreciated. And also, it's great to have you back, buddy, because last week you were heading for intensive care, I think, for a few minutes there. It was pretty bad.
I had no voice last week, and that turned into the for all of us, I'm sure. I'm sure my wife would say that. And then it turned into the flu, and then it turned into bronchitis. So it's been a rough 10 days, almost 2 weeks for me. So it's good to be back, feeling mostly normal and looking as good as I do.
You look fantastic, I got to say. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks, so it's good to be back in this chair for Trek Geeks. We have a conversation that we've been looking forward to for a while, and like you said, this seed was planted several months ago when we attended a convention in Albany, New York, Northeast TrekCon. We welcomed a new fan into the Trek Geeks family that weekend, and we gave this young lady an assignment. We'll get into all of that in just a little while ago. So I'm very excited. We're going to be talking about Voyager's The Killing Game today. So it's a 2-part episode from season 4, I believe. And so it's going to be a fun conversation, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I watched this week, I don't ever remember seeing the whole thing when it was first broadcast. I'm pretty sure that, well, I honestly can't say for sure that I've actually seen it on television in its entirety. I think I've seen clips. I think I've seen segments of it. But this is actually, as far as I can tell, the first time that I've actually sat down and watched both episodes back to back. So for me, it was kind of like having new Star Trek, which was actually kind of interesting.
It is interesting. You know, it's one thing I was very surprised. We've never seen Nazis in Star Trek before. So, you know, we get to see it for the first time. No, I know. It was really interesting. But yeah, we'll get into all that later. Well, we'll talk about it now. We met we met this person at Northeast TrekCon, Emilie, a very nice young lady whose dad introduced her to us. It was her first time listening to Trek Geeks on the way up from Rhode Island to Albany, New York for this convention, and she's a big Voyager fan. So we gave her an assignment to let us know what her favorite Voyager episode was, and we would dedicate an entire episode to that episode of Voyager just for her. So here we are.
Here we are. And in fact, Emilie now, who is she herself the co-host of her own Star Trek podcast, Legacy Trek, with her dad, Mike, who is one of our producers now, which is fantastic.
Unreal.
It's kind of neat how this all comes full circle.
Mm-hmm. Like the Lion King and the Circle of Life.
Don't sing that.
I won't.
You had your opportunity earlier. Speaking of things you should sing out, Dan, how about giving our listeners their contact information so they can tell us their favorite Lion King songs?
Absolutely. There's a lot of Lion King songs that people would love to sing, but it is so easy to get in touch with us, everyone. Just head right on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, where you will find a variety of ways to get in touch with either Bill or myself. You can leave us a voicemail. You can Skype chat us. You can fill out the contact form and type us out a personalized message, or you can even click on that giant big blue button on the right-hand side of the website and leave us a message with your very own mellifluous voice using SpeakPipe. And hey, don't forget, the place to be on Facebook these days is the Trek Geeks official Facebook group, Camp Kinnemer. Bring your Trek talk, your Trek pics, and your Trek love over to the site and join over 1,300 other friends to talk all things Trek. It's always positive talk. You're always welcome, and we welcome you over there. Don't forget, every Friday, or just about every Friday, it'll be the Friday Commute Celebration, where Bill and I will do our weekly lip sync just for our campers. To join the group, just head on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kinnemer and be ready to take part in a truly wonderful social experience. As always, we want to thank our wonderful admins, Heather, Jackie, and Dan, for the amazing work they do over at the camp. And please do remember that any comments or messages that you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode. Bill.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate that handoff. Nice job. I feel like it's been a long time since I've said this one, but Dan, it's time for the news from TrekNews.net. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant. For all the news on all the Star Treks, yo. It's TrekNews.net. Online at treknews.net. Very nicely done. You haven't lost a step at all.
Whew, I'm tired.
Yes, you need to take a breath there. Need some oxygen.
Kill Spock.
It's not what we came to welcome for, is it? Dan, up first, we are very happy and excited with the news that dropped earlier this week regarding Star Trek Discovery. As it makes its way through the halfway point of season 2, we can look forward to more adventures after they wrap up the Red Angel storyline, can't we?
Oh, yes, Bill. Much to the chagrin of the gatekeepers and haters out there, we are just ecstatic with the announcement that Star Trek Discovery has been renewed for Season 3. As CBS Access announced recently, subscriptions are far outpacing what they expected and attributes that to the overwhelming success, that's correct, the overwhelming success of Discovery. You know, I think that Season 3 was inevitable, and I am just thrilled beyond words, and I'm sure you are too, buddy.
I am so excited that there's season 3. We all knew there was going to be season 3. There's so many people going out there, well, they haven't announced it yet. There's not going to be season 3. All kinds of tinfoil hat wearing idiots on YouTube, saying that, they're going to cancel it because it's a failure and CBS All Access hasn't taken off. No. Yeah. Why would we get 5 new Star Trek series? Because Discovery was a failure. That just makes zero sense. So don't listen to the haters out there. Don't listen to the people who think they have inside sources, and I'm using air quotes. If it doesn't get announced by CBS PR, it's not happening. Right. So season 3, I can't wait. It's going to be, I can only imagine it's going to be even better than this season.
One of the things that I was very happy to see, if I remember correctly, I don't have the article up in front of me right now, but if I remember correctly what I read, the subscription numbers for CBS All Access right now are where they anticipated they would be in almost 2 years from now. Yeah. So that's pretty phenomenal. And they said in this article that they attribute those numbers to the overwhelming success of Discovery. We loved season 1. Season 2 is like way up here compared to season 1. And they are just outdoing themselves week after week after week. Head on over to Discovering Trek and check it out if you want to get more details. But I'm just so happy that this is happening. And I can't wait to see what stories are coming down the road.
Same here. I'm gonna go wild on you here and throw something in that's not on the outline, but it was also announced this week that Hanelle Culpepper has been named the director of the pilot for the yet unnamed Star Trek Picard series, and this is awesome because she will be the first woman to direct the pilot for a Star Trek series. And I got to tell you, she's done some work on Discovery. My hat is off to her. She's done a fantastic job, and I think that she is a fantastic pick to kick the she's going to do the first 2 episodes of Picard, I believe. Fantastic pick to launch that series, Dan.
You know, it's just amazing. I mentioned this, I'm not sure if it was on our last episode of Trek Geeks or if it was on an episode of Discovering Trek. What we have seen with some of what's been going on with the fantastic women involved in Star Trek really makes me so proud and happy to be a fan. We got Bowie Kim and Erica Lippo being head of the new Section 31 series. Their writing has been phenomenal on Discovery. And now we have this director who's going to be directing the premiere episode of the Picard series. Star Trek is in such good hands right now, and it makes me so happy.
Well, she directed Vaulting Ambition from season 1. She has another season 2 episode that is upcoming. She's also done episodes of Counterpart on Stars, which is a fantastic show. Shooter on USA. There's also How to Get Away with Murder, Gotham, Criminal Minds, American Crime. She's done an amazing job. So Alex Kurtzman said, Hanelle is a gifted and dynamic filmmaker whose directorial choices are always deeply rooted in character. I've been a huge fan of her work since she started with this on Discovery, and she's the perfect person to reintroduce the beloved character of Picard to longtime fans and new viewers alike, and we couldn't agree more. So congratulations to her. We can't wait to see this show now for even more reasons. Up next, Dan, we already know about the new animated Lower Decks series already in the works, but it appears that there's going to be another animated series, and it's not going to be on CBS All Access.
No, that's correct. Not on CBS at all. Alex Kurtzman and CBS TV Studios are currently in negotiations with Nickelodeon to expand the franchise with a new animated series. Written by the Emmy Award-winning duo Kevin and Dan Hageman, if I get that pronounced correctly. The new series will target a younger demographic than we've seen before. The Hageman brothers are known for their works on the Lego Movie, the Lego Ninjago movie, and Troll Hunters. So I really like the idea. We've talked before about how old you want to be or how old you want your kids to be when they start coming into Trek. Now they're getting younger. We're going to have something on Nickelodeon possibly. I think that's a plus. I'll watch it. I'm going to say it right now. I think it'll be great.
I'll watch it too. I don't know that we'll do a podcast dedicated to it.
True.
We won't. Somebody may. But I'm excited to see. Nickelodeon is one of those, cable networks that is owned by Viacom, which is part ownership by CBS, and CBS's parent company, National Amusements, which also owns part of Paramount Pictures. So, I mean, this is all woven in between. It's still staying kind of within the family to some extent. But the way to reach kids is to put it on a channel that's out there. I mean, Kurtzman drew fire for saying that he didn't think Star Trek inspired kids the same way that Star Wars did. And I think that something like this is what he was talking about. He wasn't saying that Star Trek isn't inspirational. He was just saying that the content was never focused squarely at them. Right. And if you look at the success Star Wars has had on that front, I think that this is a smart move.
Absolutely. It'll be great to see more details about what they're going to focus on, but it's something else to look forward in the Star Trek universe, and it seems that these days we have a lot to look forward to.
Without a doubt. We are also looking forward to Star Trek Las Vegas this July and August in Las Vegas, Nevada. And it appears that STLV continues to build up with guest announcements, particularly from the Discovery world. And the latest announcement, Dan, is one that certainly you and I are both incredibly excited about.
You think?
Yeah.
I see photo ops in our future Podcast partner. Yeah, definitely in our future. Creation Entertainment has recently announced that the one and only Anson Mount, who of course plays Captain Pike in season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, will be heading out to the desert for the annual Star Trek convention. He will join fellow captains Kirk, played of course by William Shatner, and Janeway, played by the wonderful Kate Mulgrew, who were announced earlier this year. Interestingly enough, though, Bill, Anson Mount is the only Discovery actor that has been announced for STLV so far. I think that'll change, obviously, but I found that very interesting.
I feel like they added the Discovery actors late both of the last 2 years. I think part of it's going to depend on the shooting schedule. There's a rumor that they may head back into production in July, I think. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but that could impact their appearance at STLV and who can actually make it. So I'll be part of that photo op. I'm not going to lie. I love Anson Mount. I think he's been fantastic. I'm still on board with wanting a Pike series after all this is done, but somehow I don't think we're going to get it.
I would love to see him in a Captain Pike series. He has been the runaway star, I think, this year on Discovery. He's been fantastic. I just love what he does. So we're going to meet him in July and August. I guarantee it.
Can't wait.
Finally, Bill, someone on this very here podcast right here, this one here, had an article published on the official Star Trek website recently. How about that?
I know. Oh, it was me.
It was you.
It was me. I am. I have to say, I have to offer my thanks first up to CBS and to the StarTrek.com team for giving me this opportunity to write something for the official Star Trek website. It is an honor and a privilege, and I'm grateful that they gave me this forum to talk about something so personal. I went to them and pitched the idea of, essentially writing an article about what I've learned from Saru with regard to my journey in learning about my anxiety. And it turned into a piece that has resonated with a great many people. And I've been really fortunate to hear some of that feedback. So it's out there. It's called What I've Learned from Saru. At the at the top of the page is a giant photo of me and Doug Jones. And I'm really proud of this piece and hopefully what people may get from it. And it was important for me to write for myself too, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think you should be extremely proud of that story. I'm extremely proud for what you wrote. It takes a strong person to be able to tell the world, which is what you've done by putting this out there on StarTrek.com, about what you've dealt with anxiety. We've talked about in the past how Star Trek has helped people. And now you have helped people because this story is out there and you've already gotten responses back of how that article has helped. So congratulations, man. I think it's a fantastic thing that you did. And I really look forward to hopefully the opportunity where you can thank Doug Jones after this article has been posted, hopefully in Vegas or something like that. I think that would be wonderful.
I hope so too. I've said all along, kind of like you have with your story about Captive Pursuit, that if this helps one person, it was ultimately worth it. And going back to Emilie, the sort of the genesis for this episode, she left us a very nice message at the beginning of their most recent podcast, which you all should check out, Legacy Trek, about what this article meant to her. And they were words that really meant a lot to me. And that alone was reason enough to do this. It made me so thankful that it touched somebody that young. That it meant something to them and it resonated with them and that they could see that, this is something that doesn't just affect young people. It isn't something that affects just, insert description here. This is something that can affect everybody. And I'm just grateful to have the opportunity.
Anxiety has no age limit, buddy. And you've done a great job with helping people. I've had my own issues through life, not anxiety related, but just reading your article really meant a lot, even to somebody like me who may not suffer from it like others do. So congratulations, bud.
Thanks, buddy. So, Dan, every now and then we get a comment on our YouTube channel where somebody says, well, the discussion doesn't start until 20 or 30 minutes into the episode. So if you're new to Trek Geeks and you're listening to the podcast, we have historically always had a few segments, and the main, content of the show usually comes in this segment here. So there's always an intro. There's more often than not, almost always news. And then there's the topic at hand, which today, Dan, is the Killing Game.
Yes.
The season 4 Voyager 2-parter. This is a pretty epic, couple of episodes. There's a lot that happens here. And you touched earlier on our reason for doing this. And I'm glad that we finally got a chance to sit down and do it after having to reschedule it a couple of times.
Yeah, I'll give it another quick breakdown for maybe those people that didn't listen to the beginning of the show, as you so eloquently pointed out just a minute ago. We met Emilie in Albany in October of 2018, and she's new to Trek Geeks, and she was very excited to meet us. We loved her. She was such a sweetheart. She drew us a wonderful picture of Trek Geeks, that build you have hanging in your office, if memory serves correctly. And we totally said, you know what, welcome to the family, and we have a homework assignment for you, because we know how much kids love homework assignments. And we told her to think of what her favorite episode of Star Trek is, and to leave us a message on our website using that big blue button that I talk about every week, and tell us why it's her favorite. So about a week later, lo and behold, we had a voicemail from Emilie talking about how her favorite episode is The Killing Game. So we promised her we would do this. I'm so happy that we finally get to do this. We had to delay it a little bit due to scheduling and so forth, but we're finally going to dedicate our discussion on The Killing Game. And we talked about Legacy Trek a few minutes ago on this week's episode of Legacy Trek. Her dad, Mike, and her spoke about the fact that we were going to be talking about it, and she actually thought that we had forgotten that we were going to do this for her. Absolutely not, my dear. We've been looking forward to this, and I just want to. I loved it. Bill hated the episode, so no, I'm just kidding. No, we're very excited to be doing this, right, Bill?
Well, that's the challenge with podcasting is scheduling. I mean. Based on guest availability or surprises that come up, sometimes you have to move the schedule around, and it really killed us to have to do, because, we were excited to do it, but unfortunately it was something that had to happen. But we're just grateful that we can talk about it now. Right. So we mentioned that we wanted Emilie to do homework, and that she sent us a voicemail. We're going to play that voicemail about why she likes The Killing Game right now.
Hi, Bill and Dan. It's Emilie, your biggest little fan this side of the Alpha Quadrant. I'm submitting my podcast homework on why I love The Killing Game, and thanks for the shirt. As I told you, 7 of 9 is my favorite character, and I really like episodes she sings in. One of my favorite parts is when the Doctor and Harry Kim jam her neural interface while she's singing Black Magic and she knows something is wrong and needs to take a break. Everything and everyone she knows is different, so she quickly has to learn and pretend she knew what she was doing. I also really enjoy most of the characters doing things they don't normally do, like Tuvok as a bartender and Neelix as a Klingon. I also like the historical aspect of the holodeck simulation. Finally, I like that Captain Janeway still wants to help the Hirogen and give them holodeck technology, even though they treated her and the crew so bad. I'm looking forward to your review of the episode. Bye for now.
I can tell you right now, Bill, she already is. She's going to be a great podcaster.
Emilie, thanks so much for that voicemail. I can totally respect all of that. I really can. However, no, we'll probably start with this part first, because you teased it a little bit ago. I'm not the biggest fan of this episode. There are some parts of it I think are really fantastic. All right, so I'll start with that first. I mean, let's not go right to the things that I don't like. Let's actually talk about some of the things that I do like. Can I tell you that Janeway makes a fantastic Klingon? That opening tease is pretty fantastic.
She makes a better Klingon than Neelix does.
Well, that's really not a big stretch. That's a low bar,
Yeah.
No, that whole opening tease is pretty interesting. I do like the fact that the Hirogen are in control of the ship. I want to know how they became in control of the ship. There's an entire, I still need to watch the couple of episodes before this. I don't know if that's ever explained, because I had to skip my, my watch order. But
it's not.
So for 17 days or whatever it is, they've had control of the ship. They've been putting them through battles and stuff. And I'm curious as to how they wound up settling on World War II.
Well, that brings up a point that I don't want to talk about yet, because it's talking about a point that I actually didn't like a whole lot. But maybe since we're bringing that up, I should just say it right now anyway.
Yeah, go ahead. Good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One of the things I found interesting is at one point in their ready room, the leader of the Hirogen is talking about the different simulations that he wants to look at, and he turns the little computer console around to his second in command to show him the Borg. I'm like, hello? Hello? The Borg are here. Why don't you know who the Borg are? I found that very strange. But then he brought up the fact that he's found the simulation about a conflict that took place on their home planet called World War II and everything. So it's like, okay, first of all, you know about the Borg. So why are you acting like you're surprised that they fought the Borg at Wolf 359? I thought that was kind of interesting.
You know, when I was taking notes on this, that was one of the first things I wrote down is like, he doesn't know about the Borg? That's the way it sounded anyway. I mean, I'm like, you're in the Delta Quadrant, mister. I mean, the Voyager's already been in Borg space.
Yeah.
They've got a Borg on board. How have they not heard of this?
We'll let it slide because Emilie loves it.
Emilie does love it. And we love Emilie.
Yes.
You know, I thought that the Alpha Hirogen was really great in this episode.
Yes.
He definitely was a different kind of Hirogen.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated that he was trying to do something for his species for the long term. You know, he knew that what they were doing was essentially unsustainable, and there was nothing to bind them together as a species necessarily. And I thought that this was really some good outside the box thinking on his part. Although I think that the critical flaw in this was that he seemed to be addicted to the holodeck more than he was the hunt. Does that make sense?
I think so. I thought it was interesting that or as I was watching this again recently, I kind of think that the Hirogen as a race and how they're written is flawed along the lines of how I used to think the Ferengi were written. The only thing they cared about was profit. The Hirogen, the only thing they care about is the hunt. And how is a species going to evolve when all they are focused on is that one thing? They can't evolve as a species. They can't, obviously they can't have technological advances because they don't have holodeck technology until Janeway gives it to them. And we'll get into that later. But it's just one of those things that as I was watching this episode, I'm like, they are so focused on this one thing, they're never going to succeed. That's why I liked this commander of the Hirogen, because he was thinking outside the box. So
I'm wondering what the hunt actually was in this, because they knew that the Voyager crew was the Resistance. It's not like they had to figure out who the Resistance was. So what was the hunt? Did I miss something here?
Emilie loves it. No, I totally see what you're saying. I mean, it brings the question of, well, the hunters will really do what they're supposed to do with the holodeck safeties off. But yeah, you're right. They know who they need to be going after. So is it really? What
was the challenge?
I mean, one of the hunters at one point told Janeway to run so that he could hunt her. It's like, okay, well, you're doing.
But at that point, she was Janeway.
Oh, well, yeah, but still, what I mean is that it's like it's that type of thinking. They know who they are in the holodeck, even if they're playing different characters. So just go after them. I totally see what you're saying, and it was a frustration point, I will say.
Can I tell you though that Catherine Janeway has a better French accent than Jean-Luc Picard?
Yes, leave the war outside.
Her pronunciation was fantastic, but when Patrick Stewart does it, it still sounds like a British guy trying to say French words.
Very nice, very nice. Let me tell you one thing. I mean, we are gonna. I think what we'll do is we'll go back and forth in things that we like versus things we don't like, because I don't want to pile on.
Will we? Will we?
I would like to, if we could, Mr. Executive Producer. Could I pose the question to the floor?
I'll allow it.
Okay, thank you. One of the things I did not like about the Hirogen, and it might just be this one particular episode, is they seem to use, and this isn't about the Hirogen, this is about the production. They seem to use fisheye lenses a lot in this episode. And they seem to use them a lot when they were doing close-ups of the Hirogen, when they were talking, especially the second in command. They did that a lot. And for me, that close-up with the kind of distorted look of the close-up made the Hirogen makeup look extremely fake, and you could tell that it was latex. I like the aliens in Star Trek where they don't have a lot of latex, or when it's done correctly, like with Saru, where you don't have that look where you can tell that it's fake. And for me, that took away from some of the scenes because it looked so odd.
Interesting. I didn't have that reaction. Mm-hmm. I thought that I don't think the Hirogens express emotion as well through their face, like say Doug Jones does as Saru on Discovery. Because the makeup is different and it's applied differently. The technology, 25 years later, is much different. But I thought that with their voices, they did a much better job of conveying the emotion because they had to compensate for that. You couldn't really see a lot of the brow decreases, or emotional responses like that. So there were times where you had to rely on the words that were being spoken. And I thought that was very effective. Whereas mainly they just looked like expressionless reptiles to some extent. Yes. I thought that the actors playing Hirogen really did a fantastic job in that regard.
One of the things I like most about the Hirogen, when they are Hirogen, they are scary. When they are Nazis, they look silly. But when they are the Hirogen on Voyager in those giant blue suits with the helmets on that look really scary, they look really badass. When they take the helmets off, their heads look kind of funny, so they're not as scary looking to me. But Hirogen versus Hirogen Nazi, Hirogen looks a lot scarier to me.
I'm going to say Tony Todd is still the best Hirogen we've ever seen.
Absolutely. 100%.
Hands down, because he's got the voice and he's got the presence.
Yes.
Still my favorite. What can I say?
Yeah.
Tell me something else you really dig about this episode.
I really like the performance that all of our crewmates play in the World War II simulation. Catherine is as the bartender, as the restaurant owner, and Tuvok as the bartender. 7 of 9 playing the singer with kind of that attitude that she has as 7 of 9. And I thought those all played very well for the Resistance. I really liked the Resistance characters in this two-parter. Chakotay and Paris as the American soldiers, a little bit different opinion on that. I thought that was a little cheesy, but that core group at the restaurant all the time with the decoding, and the code was on the back of the wine label. Stuff like that I really, really enjoyed and made me think of World War II movies that I've watched in the past. So I did like that aspect of it.
So I got to tell you this. So the first time I sat down to watch this for the podcast, I got to the decoder scene, and I don't remember ever having seen that scene before. And as they're going through this, I said to myself, if this spells out, don't forget to drink your Ovaltine, I'm going to be pissed.
That's awesome, man. That's great. Oh, but that's beautiful.
Thankfully, it didn't. But I'm sitting there going, oh my God, if this says something about Ovaltine, I'm going to throw a brick through my television.
That's awesome. It makes you think, what they were doing probably really happened in World War II. Can you imagine having to decode something like that just by listening to somebody on the radio and the sentences that they're saying, and you have to use the fifth vowel and oh my God, that would just blow my mind. And you see how important that is when later on Neelix is being hassled by the Nazis and he loses one bottle of wine that had the code on it. So they were going to miss the next message. Very, very cool how they worked that in. I liked it.
I have to say, I do appreciate that attention to detail in this episode. Mm-hmm. It added a layer that I thought was really interesting. They weren't just, well, we have to fight the Nazis. I mean, this was an organized resistance, that was working with the Allies, and they brought that forward, through the history, which I thought was fantastic. I have to say, Jerry Ryan has a delightful voice. She really can sing wonderfully.
I got to wonder, was it this episode? Because she does a fantastic job in this episode. Is it this episode that was the starting point for the Doctor and Seven singing escapades that we saw in later seasons of Voyager? If you haven't seen that, Bill, spoiler alert, get ready, because you're going to see more singing in the future.
I think I have seen that. They sing like You Are My Sunshine or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This left me wondering why Jerry Ryan didn't do like an album like Brent Spiner did his Old Yellow Eyes Is Back album, of like 40s standards, because I think that would have been fantastic. I would have bought that, hands down. So a little digression there, but I thought she was really fantastic.
Here's another little digression, and I'm not trying to be, a bad person or anybody get offended by this.
Oh, you're a bad person.
She looked unbelievably gorgeous in those singing scenes. The hair, kudos to the wardrobe and the makeup department and the hair people on Voyager. The hair, the lipstick, the way that she looked in those scenes when she was singing made me think that she was in World War II time frame. It was phenomenally done. I thought it was just masterful.
It looked like she stepped right out of a 40s era movie. She looked like, a star of the day. And it was a fantastic job. I have to agree. I appreciated the idea of the Voyager crew assuming the roles of the Resistance, but I wonder in hindsight if it wouldn't have been more effective if they didn't have to deal with the whole neural transmitter thing, and give them sort of amnesia. Would it have been more effective if they have just put them in the middle of the simulation and they had to figure out what they were supposed to do to defeat the Hirogen? Would that have made it more challenging for both sides?
My first thought on that is it would have made it more challenging for the crew, but not for the hunters. So that's probably why the hunters didn't want to do that. That's my first thought. Because
otherwise it seems like shooting fish in a barrel,
Yeah. That's kind of like what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. They know who the people from the Voyager crew are in the simulation, so why not just target them? So they kind of are. It can be a back and forth discussion. I'm sure. I don't have time for
that. Oh, sorry. Well, thank you for informing me what you do and do not have time for, Mr. Executive Producer.
Sorry. Another thing that I liked about this was how they were able to work in Roxanne's real life pregnancy into the holodeck.
I thought that was pretty good. I do liked that aspect of the storyline. I liked that it was the child of a Nazi officer, and Tom Paris's character shows up going, "Huh? What's this?
Yeah,
golly gee willikers," or whatever he said in 40s language, because they spoke weird back then.
They did.
No, I appreciated that aspect of it, especially for what it would mean for a young French woman of that, that era. I mean, because you want to talk about taboo. Not only is she unmarried, pregnant, but she's also having the child of a Nazi. I'm not sure why this woman wasn't spat on in the streets.
Well, she actually was. We saw. That's what I was just going to talk about. The first time that we see her, we see the two elderly women walking towards the camera, and I'm just like, oh, that's not good. Yeah,
but I mean, like everybody. Why weren't the Nazis spitting on her too? I mean, like she's. But I thought it was also wonderfully played by Roxanne Dawson too. And like you said, a really great use of her real life pregnancy, which they've been trying to hide up until this point.
Sure. Sort of like they did with Gates McFadden and TNG by having her wear the bigger looking lab coat. So they would have Roxanne wearing the engineering coat, which all of a sudden just showed up on Voyager when that happened.
It looked just like her uniform.
Yeah, exactly. It also made me think, this episode has a lot of things that make you really think about what happened during the real life conflict in World War II. Roxanne's character, Brigitte, I think was her name, she purposely got pregnant from this Nazi commandant so that she could help spy for the resistance. That just blows my mind of what people actually sacrificed during those real times. And it's one of the things that I like about Star Trek. It makes you think about stuff like that.
Well, and if that were, that character were a real person, this person would have to live with that for the rest of their lives. Every time they looked at that child, they would have to be reminded of the fact that, I had a relationship with this Nazi to try to save the world. I mean, that's pretty weighty. I mean, they don't really delve into that in the episode, but if you carry that forward, I mean, that's some pretty impressive writing right there.
Yeah, it really is. And you got to give my hats off to the writing people for throwing in those nuggets from time to time in this episode. So, Bill, here we are settling into the month of March here in early 2019, and we already have one new Star Trek pin this month to talk about. Yes, Mirror Landry from Star Trek Discovery is now available for you to add to your collection from our good friends at Fansets. You know, as always, their pins continue to be of the highest quality, and there are things on the horizon that you would not even believe, my friend.
Oh my God. Right. You are, Dan. You know, one of the things we love about Fansets is they have so many great ideas for pins, and they always come out so great and so amazing. As we talk Voyager today, we're excited that the next pin to be released on March 15th is none other than Mr. Tom Paris. And as the folks of Fansets have announced during this year, they're going to release the remainder of the main cruise for all of the Star Trek shows, which is really exciting.
That is very cool. There's a lot of them out there, but there's a lot missing, so we'll be able to fill in those remaining crews. It's very cool. But, you know, Fansets is not just about Star Trek, buddy. Lou and John from Fansets wanted to let everyone know that very soon they will be introducing pins for shows like Supernatural and Big Bang Theory, which is very cool. And fans of DC can look forward to pins exclusively on the DC Universe App Store for stuff from Titans, Doom Patrol, and Young Justice. Lots of very cool things are in the works. And as a special bonus to Trek Geek listeners, if you would like to receive 15% off your entire order at fansets.com this week, even if you order some of that non-Star Trek stuff, simply enter the word Spock at checkout, all capitals and no spaces. And FYI, if you want to know what that code refers to, you're going to want to have to listen to Discovering Trek this week because it's big. This code will be available until midnight on Sunday, March 10th, 2019, so don't delay.
Fansets. We are Star Trek. And we thank our friends at Fansets for sponsoring this week's episode. So, Dan, as we get back to the Killing Game, I want to talk about the end of part 1 really quickly. Because, as you know, this is big simulation on the holodeck. The Hirogen have enslaved the Voyager crew to turn the whole ship into essentially one giant holodeck by putting emitters everywhere. And there's obviously power concerns. And at one point, there was an explosion of the Nazi headquarters in the holodeck simulation, which takes out a good chunk of 4 decks of the USS Voyager. Help me understand this.
So
because
dumb.
This makes... Okay, so you can't help me understand it is what I'm learning.
Yeah, you know, every once in a while, there are flaws in an episode that you really can't just overlook, and that's one of the flaws. Now, I could try to be a good guy and say, well, you know, the holodeck safeties are off, so even though they're simulated explosions, they're explosions because of this whole fail-safe thing. But, yeah.
I wouldn't have had nearly the problem with it if Harry Kim hadn't said it was a simulated explosion. Now, yes, holographic bullets can kill if the safeties are off. I get it. But at the end of the day, they're still holograms. It's not going to necessarily, take out a big part of the ship. If he had just said there's been an explosion in the holodeck, I'm all in. But I think it was just the one word that really threw me. I'm like, why would it destroy 4 decks? Hello?
You just said something, and I'm sorry. It made me think of First Contact. This is Ensign Lynch. Even a holographic bullet can kill. You said that, and it made me think of that. So,
that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah,
I know it's one of those things. I think that what we've seen sometimes in Voyager and the other Star Trek shows, but we have seen it in Voyager, is sometimes with the writing, there are some things that we have to just go with in order for us to continue the story along to get to the end result that the writers wanted us to see. And is it possibly something we've talked about when we talked about All Good Things on for the finale of TNG, the huge mistake that it was the Pasteur that sent out one of the emissions instead of the Enterprise, which was supposed to be. Nobody knew that for like 10 years. And I think Ron Moore talked about it. His son pointed it out after the fact. Is what happened here with this whole thing with the simulated explosions maybe something along the same line? Somebody just wrote it wrong? I don't know. I got to throw my hands up. I'm going to throw my hands up.
You did, in fact, throw your hands up.
I did.
Now, are you going to wave them like you just don't care? No, you're not. Okay. So it's interesting. And going back to, the genesis of this episode and when it was being written, there's an interesting note on Memory Alpha. and I'm just going to read it verbatim because I think it's interesting, and I'll see what you think about it. The specifics of how the characters would be transported into the World War II setting still had to be devised. Quote, so we were struggling with how this was going to happen, Joe Menosky related. He was one of the authors of the script with Brandon Braga. Quote, in my original story, I had the hunters having a kind of hunting scenario planet. It was like a planetary holodeck, and we found ourselves down in a simulation because they drove us there. But in working out the story, when we were all together as a staff team, Ken Biller came up with the idea that it was on our own holodeck. Menosky also stated, Ken Biller had the good idea of putting it on a holodeck and making this the big holodeck episode of the year. That was the last key to getting things rolling in terms of actually starting to write the episode. I actually like the idea of a holographic planet scenario, hunting planet, much more. I think that probably would have been a much more interesting and scary episode, quite frankly.
I don't want to give away any spoilers to you, but I'm going to.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. I could be confusing 8472 with the Hirogen right now. But later on, there is like a giant space station that Voyager comes into contact with that is pretty much a giant holodeck simulation. I can't remember what species it is. So they kind of do that later anyway. If I remember correctly now, anybody please correct me if I'm wrong, because it does happen once in a while. But that's popping into my head right now as you talk about it. I think that idea is pretty cool too. It made me think of the movie Predators as soon as you started reading that quote where the whole planet was set up as kind of like a hunt. Yeah, I think that would have been very interesting. I do like the fact that all the writers are talking about the fact that there is a holodeck episode always planned for every season. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, is it though?
No, that's what I mean. It's not.
So when I told you I was watching, while I was recuperating from my various plagues, I told you I was watching The Killing Game, and you said, "Oh, cool. I like part 1, but part 2, So why the difference? Why don't you like part 2 as much as part 1?
Well, in order to say that, I have to say that since I watched part 2 again, specifically for this podcast, I have a different view on it than I did in the past.
Okay, so why don't you tell us why you didn't like it before and then jump forward as to why you changed your mind?
I didn't like the flow of part 2 back in the day. I'm like, okay, it's kind of clunky. They keep going, okay, yeah, Neelix, Klingons, blah, blah, blah. You will listen, blah, blah, core, blah, whatever. And I just didn't like how things went from scene to scene. It was a little jumpy to me. The way that the Hirogen commander and his second in command dealt with things. I just didn't like the second part story. I really did not like the whole Allied forces and how they were, especially Chakotay and Tom Paris. Rewatching it though, I have a better respect and I guess admiration for the episode. I thought it flowed better watching it now, and I probably have not watched Killing Game for 4 or 5 years at least until we watched it for this podcast. So I had a better appreciation for it, I guess is the best way to put it. I was able to overlook some of the things that before I wouldn't have, like when the second in command was hunting Janeway and she's hiding behind the plating that had fallen down. And as a hunter, you're not just going to sit there and wait for her to do something. You're going to kill her immediately when you see her. That's what a Hirogen is supposed to do. But instead, he just kind of listens to her and he walks closer so that the whatever was causing the disruption in the holographic weapon could make his gun disappear. I just didn't like how that went the first time. The second time, I kind of appreciated it a little bit better, gave it a little bit more drama, and I can appreciate that the writers wanted to have that in the story. So,
I actually kind of liked the second part a little more than the first part. I watched it again today, and I thought that the action carried better in the second part than it did in part 1. At first, I was wondering why this was a 2-part episode, because I feel like they could have done this in an hour. Mm-hmm. But as I watched the second part again, I get that there was really kind of an episode and a half here, and not maybe 2 full parts. But I actually kind of liked that sequence. I kind of really enjoyed when, the second in command of the Hirogen told Janeway to run. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, it's on now. You want to hunt? Okay.
That part was cool. Yeah.
That part was really cool. I didn't mind the holographic bit. We knew Janeway wasn't going to die. But Janeway also wasn't going to input the self-destruct code, which would have ended the series. Which theoretically By Starfleet rules, she should have done.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other thing I don't get. Why does Harry select a 9-minute countdown?
I don't. Why couldn't it? It should have been 47 minutes, as far as I'm concerned.
It should have been 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you this.
But no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. We're on this. We're on the part of part 2. We talked about the simulated explosion in part 1 that damaged 4 decks, and the argument back and forth of whether that should have happened. If they're using the holographic bombs to put under sickbay so that they can have all of the transmitters shut off, why is that any different?
I don't know. I have that same question myself. If all of a sudden these holographic bombs are real bombs, why did it not destroy sickbay?
Well, it did.
Did it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sickbay was blown away. big explosion right up out the doors into the hallway because they were planted underneath that deck. But the question is, if they're holographic bombs, is it a simulated explosion? Yeah.
I forgot that part. So,
oh, that's okay. It's just, but this, it's the same thing. Simulated explosion in the holodeck, destroying the 4 decks. But even though, and it's the same thing in part 2 with the bombs under sickbay, they're holographic bombs, but because of the safety protocols being turned off, they're legitimate bombs. Kind of goes back. You can have this. It's like a time vortex. You can just talk about it forever and talk yourself in and out of stuff.
Totally gives you a headache. It's really nice that they can get sickbay back to working order for next week, though.
Let me tell you why I liked part 1 better. And this is a very quick thing, because I know we want to move on to the next thing. I liked what we saw in part 1 with the simulation when we first met these people in the restaurant, singing. The next day, Neelix riding the bike with the bread and having to deal with being bullied by some of the officers. Then later on, we see them again being bullied and shot in the back by the Nazis, Seven and Neelix. I liked that idea of seeing the outside of what's going on in this village and to give you an idea of what life was like during occupations like that, where I thought part 2 was more inside places. You didn't get that outside feel, except for when they were fighting at the end, which really didn't look really all that, like it was in a real expansive outdoor area. But I just kind of like that whole storyline in part 1 about knowing what these people were going through as people who were thrust into this simulation of World War II.
Interesting. I can appreciate all that. And you're right. The whole bomb thing is a circular argument. It's chicken and egg. It's the kind of thing that, you're just never going to get a good response on. It happened,
Right.
Yeah. Ultimately, I don't think it necessarily takes away from the episode, but as I was watching it, essentially for the first time, it really just sort of did scratch my head. I want to talk about the ceasefire and sort of the dialogue between the Alpha Hirogen and Janeway in the ready room, because I understand what he's trying to do for his people, and I even at the end of this episode, I'm wondering if I can't decide if the guy was crazy or if he was brilliant. And I'm kind of on the fence between them. Because the second in command was going to go along with him up to a point, as we demonstrated in this episode. But was he crazy or was he brilliant?
Well, I talked about that a little bit earlier when I talked about the fact that this guy was thinking outside the box, and he knew that his species had been focused on this way of life that was holding them back. And in order for them to be able to continue to thrive as a race, they needed to have a new way of thinking. And he was that person. It's ironic that this World War II simulation dealt with a resistance, because he was starting this resistance of starting something new with the Hirogen. So I think he was brilliant, personally.
Okay. No, I respect that. I think he's a little column A, a little column B. Maybe ahead of his time. Maybe the other Hirogen couldn't really grasp what he was trying to bring to the table for their species. I don't know.
Here's one thing that I'll add to what I was saying. I think he was brilliant, but I think he was blind to any deviation from what he wanted to do with the plan, which could make him a little crazy. Yeah. He wasn't willing to listen to anything. He was going to do this, and it cost him his life.
It really did. I did like the scenes between him and Janeway in the ready room, because I thought it added the most context of the episode. I thought it would have been better to have some of that up front, to sort of lay the groundwork for some of this. I think that there are great pieces of this episode all over the place. I just don't know if they're in the right order, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I will say one of the things I also love that Ready Room scene, and I love the way that the Hirogen changed the Ready Room with all of the things on the wall and the nets and stuff like that. It made me think of Predator, which when you think about it, the Hirogen are predators. I really like that. You're right. Things were out of order, but I do. You may have this later in the list, and if so, just say that's coming up later, Dan, because it just popped in my head. Janeway gave him holodeck technology, dude.
Let's do it now.
Okay.
Let's do it now.
What the hell?
I walked away from this going, wait, so she gave him the technology anyway? And they did it simply so they wouldn't be enslaved as prey. I'm stammering because I don't get it. I feel like that's kind of the opposite of what we expect our Starfleet crew to do. Oh, we want to save our lives. Here, you can use this to build your own holodeck. Here you go. Help me.
I can understand why she decided to do this, but I understand that the Hirogen are a warp-capable society, and that they might not be under the umbrella of the Prime Directive, but she 100% totally changes the flow of that civilization with that one little box that she hands them, and that just blows my mind. That everybody was just so okay with that. That entire race is now forever changed, and the way that they do things right from that moment are completely different than what they were the moment before, and it's just very hard for me to grasp.
I can appreciate that she says, yeah, you're going to hang this on your wall if you want to, or you can put it to good use. She's handing it over to them, and I'm going,
Maybe Dr. Moriarty was in that one.
Well, I mean, these Hirogen, they don't strike me as scientists. No. They don't strike me as engineers, maybe. I mean, maybe they are if they have to be, but I was stunned at that development because it just seemed like I would expect that of an ensign. I would expect that of, maybe special guest star of the week who does something that, like Worf's brother. Mm-hmm. When he in the episode, was it Homeward? Whatever it is, played by Paul Sorvino. I expect that to be done, and the captain then has to deal with that repercussion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get. I mean, they didn't even want to give some race their stories so that they could get transporter technology to get closer to home earlier in Voyager, season 1 or 2, and now they're giving over holodeck technology simply just to get away with their skins.
I hate to say this because I've said it so many times and it sounds like I'm bashing Voyager, and I really am not. As I've said 100 times, I have a new appreciation of Voyager since I rewatched it on H&I over the last couple of years. This one moment to me makes me think that, okay, they had this much longer than it should have been 2-part episode with this huge storyline and special effects. Oh my God, we only have 2 minutes more before we have to wrap up this episode. Give them holodeck technology so they can all fly off in their different directions and everybody's happy. The end. That makes me think that could be what happened.
Yeah, and I don't want this to seem like I hate the episode, because I don't. I mean, this is not a terrible episode, but as somebody watching this for the first time, especially when I have other new Star Trek that I'm watching, like Discovery, and without giving any Discovery details away, that those episodes are crafted very differently. I wonder if that colored my perception on watching The Killing Game. I have to assume that's possibly true, although it's hard for me to say.
Right. And I'm with you. I don't hate this episode at all. I enjoy this episode a lot, and I'm thrilled that Emilie thinks this. It says that this is her favorite one. There's a lot in this episode to love. I think as she watches other episodes, she may have different ideas about different episodes, but there are parts of the episode that make me kind of scratch my head, but it's still an enjoyable 2 episodes of Voyager. It's no Year of Hell, but it's still fun to watch.
Well, that's it. Year of Hell has already happened at this point, right? So I've watched that, and I'm going, wow, that was pretty fantastic. And then you're thinking, well, this is going to be another 2-part event, and
exactly.
I feel like there's a lot of holes here, and I don't mean in the holodeck.
That's simulated explosions.
I do have to say that I really liked the introduction of the Klingons. I'm not going to lie. When they come, barreling over the barricades in France, I'm like going, all right, this is actually pretty fun. I got a huge smile on my face, and I'm like going, all right, so we got Nazis versus Klingons. This sounds like, Aliens versus Cowboys or whatever that movie was.
Yeah, it sounds like a bad B movie. Yeah.
It was fun. It was really fun.
It was. And, we don't see the gore, but that scene where that commandant gets killed, that's pretty gruesome. I mean, you see his point of view as this batless coming down into his chest. That's pretty intense, but he deserved it.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
I will say, in regards to the Klingons, one thing I didn't like about part 2, and I touched on a little bit, is, again, here we are with Klingons being drunk, and all they're thinking about is going into battle, and the stereotype that we sometimes see with the Klingons sometimes gets a little too much for me. Luckily, unluckily, we had the humor of Neelix as a Klingon for those scenes. But I did think of that when we were watching those scenes at the campfire with the Klingons.
Yeah, no, I thought that was fun when Neelix was trying to get them to do what he wanted to do. I actually rather enjoyed that scenes.
Okay.
Him and the Doctor. It was a nice break in the seriousness of the rest of the episode. And ultimately, I don't think you realize until it happens that the Klingons are going to come in and save the day, or the holographic Klingons, I mean. But I just thought it was a really nice way to tie up that loose end. Yeah, I thought that provided probably the best ending possible.
I can agree with that. Yeah, because those scenes were pretty lighthearted, especially with Neelix. Though they were. I meant the whole part, like we saw it at the beginning with Janeway. Klingons battling with steel blades instead of phasers, whatever. But later on, every time we saw those Klingons at the campfire, they were always drunk. They were always eating horribly with no manners, and they were always talking about blood and death.
So they were Klingons.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Dan, final thoughts on Killing Game.
It is a fun 2-parter. It has its flaws, but I think that it is, based on what we see later on in the series, I will say it's an essential 2 episodes to watch for Voyager. I really do think that. We get to see characters acting a little bit outside their norm, which we loved in Far Beyond the Stars on Deep Space Nine. This is not really that much different. So it's fun. There's some fun aspects to it. There's some seriousness. It makes you think, because they do what Star Trek does. It makes you think about real life events. Even though it's got its flaws, it is something that I think people should watch if they're being told what episodes of Voyager are critical and crucial.
You mean like gonna see it or skip it? Because I would absolutely say see it.
Yes, I would definitely give it a see it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about you? Other thoughts for you?
I think there's still things to appreciate about this episode. I mean, I did have a lot of questions watching it really for the first time. But on subsequent rewatches, some of it made sense and others of it was just like, why did they make that decision? Ultimately, I still enjoyed it as a couple of hours of television. And like I said, I wouldn't turn it off if it were on. It's not like this is the Muse from Deep Space Nine, which I just won't watch.
Right.
Because that's just a putrid episode. But no, I thought this is, Emilie, this is a great example of what we refer to as the champion rule, and that somebody's favorite episode might also be somebody's least favorite episode, because people like different things. And I like this episode. I just don't love it. That's probably the best way to state it. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I like it. I like it a lot, but I don't love it. I will always put Year of Hell on a plateau when I'm talking about great Voyager episodes, especially 2-parters, any 2-parters in any of the Star Trek series. But this one's enjoyable. It's not one, like you said, if I'm flipping through the stations or if I'm flipping through Netflix, I'll throw it on purposefully. If it's on BBC America, I'll watch it. I won't skip past it, and it's got some good stuff. And I'm glad that Emilie enjoys it as much as she does.
Absolutely. So we send our best to Emilie and Mike, and thank you so much for your homework and for becoming our friend. We are grateful to have you out there, and we look forward to hearing more from the Legacy Trek podcast too. Dan, we're also looking forward to hearing more from our friends, the band 5 Year Mission, without whom this podcast would not be nearly as awesome as it already is because of your dulcet tones and your mellifluous voice. I know, right? I'm saying the same thing.
I appreciate that.
We want everyone to head on out to 5yearmission.net. Go get all their albums. Seriously, I mean, you got year 1, year 2, year 3, Spock's Brain, Trouble with Tribbles, and now, of course, year 4, which has been out for some time. If you haven't picked it up yet, you are really doing yourself a disservice. So that's 5yearmission.net. Go get all their albums, yo.
Speaking of year 4, I don't know if anybody on Facebook who might be following 5 Year Mission or FARC or whomever, they actually pulled names out of a hat the other day for who's going to be doing what with year 5. It's coming down the road. So that's very cool. But Bill, I got to say, it's no real secret that season 2 of Discovery is dealing with a search for Spock, so to speak, right? So with that in mind, it made me think of the movie itself of that same title the other day. You know, the one where previously the drummer had died in the last movie and Kirk went back for him, but he was actually alive again on that planet, but didn't really have any memories because they were mind melded into the lead singer, Rittenhusen or whatever his name is. You know the one I'm talking about, right? Well, anyway, thankfully, the Vulcan High Priestess was familiar with the method to restore those memories to our favorite drummer. You know it. I know it. Thank goodness for the FARC Torpan, because that refusion, it was important and it worked. The FARC Torpan. Welcome back. It's good to be here.
You had 2 weeks, and that's what you came up with.
I just make the notes of the amazing movie that I watched and just
you
write
had
it down.
2 weeks. And you bring us FARC Torpan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, my logic is, uncertain where my drummer is concerned. So.
Plus, now don't forget you can support Discovering Trek and Trek Geeks and the Trek Geeks network of podcasts by subscribing to bonus content via Patreon. You can get access to our carpool conversations, videos, and other exclusive content that we'll be bringing you. Plus, you can see the first of our brand new annual supporters pins, which Dan is holding in his hot little hands. And you can check out our exclusive Podfleet t-shirt design along with so many perks, Dan.
Absolutely. And speaking of Patreon, Bill, we want to take a moment to recognize our wonderful associate producers and producers of Trek Geeks. We are so thankful for their support. So thank you, associate producers Adam Sanders, Brandon Everidge, Harry Michelson, Heather Sohn, John Krikorian, Peter Craig, Rick Tatro, Robert Womack, Shane Murray, Sean Lynn, Tim Robertson, Tim Serdar, Vikram Bhatt, and Yancey Evans. That's a lot of associate producers, and we are so thankful.
It's almost eclipsed by the list of producers, which I'm going to go through now. Thanks to every single one of them: Ken Tripp, Casey Shafsky, Jackie and Chris Hackney, Leonel Marchand, Craig Ewing, Sean O'Halloran, Chris Trabuzio, Eric Extreme, Norman Lau, Mike Bovia, Patrick Escudero, Charlie Mulvey, and the lovely and talented Scott Vachon.
That's a lot. That's so great. Hey, if you would like to become a producer or associate producer of Trek Geeks, or even get access to the raw audio of Trek Geeks and Discovering Trek, head right on over to patreon.com/Trek Geeks.
Next week, Dan, we're going to discuss a topic that we're pretty sure every single Star Trek fan on the planet can relate to. It's not Pon Farr. It isn't even the FARC Torpan, which I can't believe I just said that because it was horrible. And Dan, it's not even continuity in canon. It's something far more fun and much more expensive.
Very expensive, but oh, so worth it, Bill. Next week, we will tackle the amazing topic of Star Trek collectibles. We were going to do this late in 2018, but we had to reschedule it. You know, from the early days of the horrible Star Trek marketing of toys to the multi-billion-dollar business that it is today. What's your favorite collectible? What's mine? Well, next week, you're all going to find out on Trek Geeks, the flagship podcast of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Bill?
Thank you, Dan. Of course, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out the Tricorder Transmissions online at the tricordertransmissions.com. And of course, for all the news on all the Star Trek Yo, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 169 of the Trek Geeks Podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Coconut.
2 weeks. 2 weeks, and all you got is coconut.
Oh, I'm saving it up for next week because it's going to be beautiful. I have no idea what I'm going to do in 2 weeks. Or next week, or the week after.
You had no idea what you were going to do today. That didn't stop you.
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing one song for each episode of the original series. Download their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks, a Star Trek podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producer, Bill Smith. For even more Star Trek discussion, check out Discovering Trek, a Star Trek Discovery companion, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and discoveringtrek.com.
Bing bong!
Bing bong.
Oh, that's...
Hey.
Wow, hey, hello, mister.
How you doing?
How are you?
It's good to be here.
It's, at your age, it's good to be anywhere. Hello!
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
I'm only 2 weeks older than you.
Oh, yeah, but you're still old.
That means you're old.
You look older, though.
Your face looks older.
No, it actually doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Your face looks young and vibrant.
Oh, thank you.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm excited to be here. It's been a while.
I feel like we haven't done this in months.
It's been a while.
It's just been a couple weeks, but...
Yeah, we had my dad-in-law passed, and then you got the plague, so we didn't get to record last week either.
Yeah, I was patient zero.
It was like literally the killing game.
Oh, you must have been psyched.
I'm like, he's sick? Really?
I know. I get these frantic texts every day. How are you doing today, buddy? You feeling worse?
That's such a lie.
Not you feeling any better, but he's hoping I kick the bucket.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I had the flu. It turned into bronchitis, and at one point I sounded like I was dying.
Yeah, you did. You did sound. Speaking of dying, I got to tell you something. I told Sue about this, and I said I was actually going to tell you about it next time we recorded because it was so special. I had a special dream recently, and you were in it, and I want to share it with you here on the Trek Geeks podcast.
Oh God.
We were in Vegas.
Okay, so far I'm liking the way this shapes up.
Yeah, we were at I think it was STLV. I'm not 100% positive, but we were at what I think was the Rio. And something happened, and some like gigantically famous, dangerous, mean mobster was after us. Okay? And he got to us, and we were in the, I don't know if it was the convention hall at STLV, but it was some big open spacious place. And he pulled me aside, and he was going to kill me. And so he's talking to me, and he's got his guys with guns right there. And I talked him out of it. He's like, all right, you're all set. We'll be good. Where's your buddy Bill? Because I got to talk to him next. So I'm like, oh, God, he's going to kill Bill. And so we found you, and I was standing right behind him. And he goes, is this the guy? I said, yeah. He goes, you, come with me. So you and him and a bunch of his thugs go into another area of where we're at. And I sit down at a table and start reading a menu. And they've got their guns pointed at you and everything. And you keep like pointing at me like, help me. And I just kept reading my menu. Yep. And then finally, all of a sudden, you and all of his people are running past me and going up a set of stairs because a security guard saw the guy and recognized him. So you all ran away. So I don't know if he ever killed you or not, but I wasn't really doing anything to stop it.
So as far as you know, I got 2 in the back of the head in the middle of the Nevada desert.
It's quite possible. Or a baseball bat like Joe Pesci.
That would be in a cornfield, though.
Well, it was still in the desert.
A cornfield in the desert, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Corn. It was a corn maze. Maze.
Corn,
Sorry.
I don't think corn grows in the sand, dummy.
All right. But yeah, sorry. So I wasn't really there to help you very much, but I did save myself. And that's the important thing.
Were you saying it was just like real life?
And Susan, I'm telling her the story, and she's just looking at me with this grin and shaking her head like, "Oh, he's gonna love this."
So let's recap. You save your own ass, and there's an oncoming bus, and you don't just push me in front of it. I mean, you get a running start, and you throw a low tackle, and I'm like, thrown into the path of that oncoming bus.
Not so much at that, but I think what it was the bus was near me and it was parked and the window to the driver was open. And I said, "Hey, I'll let you know when you should start backing it up or go forward and run the guy over. You just wait for my signal." I think that's what I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if anything happens to me in Vegas now, this is recorded for time and all eternity. You now have provided yourself, the noose they're going to hang you with at the end of the trial.
The guy who said that you're going to be killed in a corn maze in the desert. Yeah, I'm sure they'll trust me.
Well, they didn't say you were the brightest criminal. In fact, most criminals are not bright.
True. I would never let anything. I would make sure that they didn't hurt you that bad.
That bad, yeah. Mobsters. Okay.
Put your head in a vice.
Yeah, as we record this, there are 149 days left until Star Trek Las Vegas.
That is way too long.
5 months. Just under 5 months to go.
That's long.
It is now the beginning of March, which is exciting.
Very. Spring. Turn the clocks. Yes.
We turn the clocks next weekend, by the way.
I'll tell you what, one of the best days of the year is the Monday after we change the clocks and we get to drive home in full daylight after work. I love that.
Well, right now I don't need a flashlight to take Abby out the first thing in the morning. Next Sunday I will, and I'm fine with it.
That's okay.
Yeah, because it's just a few more weeks before it's light out again, and then there'll be singing birds and, in New Hampshire, mud season.
But yes, don't you think they should get rid of that whole turning the clocks thing altogether?
I think we should just leave it on daylight savings time and let it go, which is the equivalent of Atlantic time, which is one time zone to the
east
of us.
Yes, I
would love to just stay on Atlantic time.
I would love that. Let's write our alderman about that.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll get it done. Yeah. Are you ready to do this?
I am ready. I've been looking forward to doing this conversation for a while, so let's do it.
I'm glad that's one of us. Here we go.
Whoa.
Coconut.